Hi, everybody, and welcome to another Spark Talks episode. Today, we're joined by Morgan Anderson, SPARQ360 CEO of Americas, and we're going to talk about sustainability for US-based LSPs and 3PLs. Hi, Morgan. How you doing today?
Doing well, Evan. Thanks. How are you?
Doing good. And we were talking the other day about how LSPs are seeing more and more requirements for sustainability initiatives in their RFPs. What are they telling you?
That it's almost table stakes. It's becoming a requirement in a lot of the bids and RFPs that hit the market. Um, I have a funny story. I don't know if you have time for this, but I was at a trade show earlier this year, and a former boss of mine, we worked at a 3PL together, was giving me the, hey, this is dumb. Why are we doing it? I don't, sustainability is not important to us. And I said, okay, things changed, let me know. And literally a week later, he texted me, hey, we need to talk. And in essence, the largest customer that they had changed the requirements, if you will, and asked for a variety of things in the sustainability field. And my buddy was like, we don't know what to do. So that's one thing that we've seen. And then I would say most recently, we engaged with a group that had their largest customer, in essence, 1/3 of their revenue, basically approach them and say the new expectations for doing business with us. And this customer was an extremely large apparel and footwear company. And they approached a forwarder and basically said, if you want to be included in the annual tender, you need the following things: an EcoVadis, you need a sustainability program, you need to track, measure, report. And if you can't do these things, then unfortunately, you're not going to be included in the tender. So a couple of things like that are popping up, and we're seeing quite a bit of it in the marketplace.
Yeah, and to your point, SPARQ360 partnered with App State University earlier this year and did a study of supply chain managers across the country. And one of the things that we found, and I'll drop a link down there for people that want to check out that report. One of the things we found is 93% are reporting seeing sustainability requirements in RFPs, and more than a third are reporting often or always. So that was a little surprising to me when we saw that. But along those lines, so if I'm a leader in an LSP or a 3PL, how should I be approaching this sustainability challenge now that it's kind of more mainstay?
Yeah, and just to maybe finish up on what I said earlier, what we're hearing and what we're seeing from clients, friends, people in the market is that it's becoming a competitive disadvantage. So if you don't somehow take a stand on this and participate, you're at a disadvantage. The other thing I would say, and what we've seen is you can't really fake it. I think one of another friend of mine told me, well, they were just putting window dressing in the bids. Well, the shippers and the people are figuring that out. So you need a legitimate program, right? You need to address it. I don't know if this metaphor makes sense or not, but if you think about safety, like anyone that runs a warehouse or anyone that is a carrier or is in this business understands how important safety is. You just have to do it, right? It has to be a part of your organization. And that's kind of what we're seeing happening with sustainability. It's got to be a legitimate program. There has to be awareness, there has to be training, and you have to have programs and SOPs and processes that you're following. Because if you try to fake it, they're going to snuff that out pretty quickly.
So even though it involves money and time, if I guess some people would argue that I'd be putting myself at a disadvantage by incorporating these expenses in an annual budget and so on. But you're saying that's not the case.
Well, it depends. So certainly there is potential for it being a cost increase. What we're seeing and what we're finding, 3PLs, carriers, LSPs, they know how to optimize, right? They do this for a living, right? This is part of the job. How do I close the loop, or how do I reduce the backhaul, or how do I improve my asset utilization? So many times when you're doing that, you're also reducing your CO2, right? You're also improving your capability or your performance from a sustainability standpoint. So a big piece of this is just capturing what you're already doing. A big piece of this is just putting a different lens on it. So it's like killing two birds with one stone. But what we're seeing is that this is becoming table stakes, right? You have to do this to some degree, and for a bunch of reasons. Many of in Europe is driven by regulatory, but in the U.S., where we're seeing this is it's market driven. So the large entities are their board of directors have made decisions. They've committed to net zero. They've made commitments to a variety of people, and as a part of their value chain or as a part of their supply chain, they're going to need you as a partner to comply. That's why we're seeing it in the RFPs. So they're basic things like tracking, measuring, reporting. Many of these large entities are making net zero commitments, like they want to be net zero by 2030 or 2035. Well, they need the help of their value chain and supply chain. And so the folks that are participating that are going to help them with those optimization projects that they then capture the benefit are at an advantage versus those that say, well, we're not interested in this. This is not something important to us.
Now, you talked about tracking, measuring, and reporting, and you talked about knowing your clients' needs and being aware of those. Is there anything else that people need to be looking at to start a sustainability program?
Yeah, I probably should have said this in the beginning. For those of you in the industry, you know what Smart Way is, right? Or you understand some of those programs. The ESG, the sustainability standard, if you will, is something called EcoVadis, EcoVadis, and almost all of the RFPs that we're seeing, they require some type of EcoVadis score. So you can go online to EcoVadis, or you could contact folks like us. We can help you. But you need to get an EcoVadis score, because that tells them immediately that you're legit, that you're taking this serious. If you say we don't care about EcoVadis, we don't know what it is, that's in some of the RFPs and some of the activity we've seen, that's almost a disqualifier. So that's kind of step one is, and also when you go through that process, I think you get the total understanding of what they're asking for from a holistic standpoint.
So those are a few good things: EcoVadis score, track, measure, and report, and then knowing your client's needs. That's a good trifecta there. And I like what you were saying earlier about how you can capture optimization while you're doing sustainability and offset a lot of those costs. I had a conversation, I guess, a few weeks ago with Tier de Jong, our operations guy over in Europe, and we were talking with Scott Luton over at Supply Chain Now about how you have sustainability, you have supply chain optimization, and you have supply chain resilience, and how they all kind of interrelate. And I'll put a link to that chat. It was a fun conversation. I'll put a link down at the bottom if anybody wants to check that out. So can you give me an example? Can you give us an example of how somebody has started from nothing and implemented a program successfully?
Yeah, I think I gave an example earlier of this large company said, you need to do all these things to be included in the tender. And so they did a lot of work, and we helped them with some of this. But there's a piece of awareness, right? As I mentioned, safety is a metaphor, right? You have to have awareness. So there was company-wide awareness. There was some real brief training on it and where we're going. There was something called a materiality assessment, like what's material and what's not. EcoVadis, we've mentioned that as a piece of it. But then folks just develop plans. And as I said earlier, a lot of these go hand in hand with just common sense optimization, asset utilization, how to reduce backhaul, and all these things, that all the waste that exists in the supply chain. And so what we saw, some of these companies have like a lean program or a Six Sigma or a lean Six Sigma program. And just how do you combine these, or how do you kill the two birds with one stone? So a big piece of it is tracking and measuring. And it was amazing to me, at least in some of the examples we have, that folks realize that the light bulb goes off. It's like, yeah, we're already doing this work. So why not take advantage of it? Why not count the dollars saved, which are very important, and also the CO2 reduced? And in some ways, they were using some of the dollars saved to fund some of this work. So I think that's the way to think about it, is don't view it as an add-on, view it as something that you're already doing. It makes sense. And then how do we just make sure that we capture what we're doing and report it properly?
Gotcha. And is there anything else you think that are people in operations, leadership, or business development, any of those professionals in an LSP or 3PL, what else should they know?
Well, I just think, what we've seen over the last year and a half is it's not going away. This is not like some flavor of the night. These companies, like large entities, their board of directors have made commitments, and regardless of what happens in the election, regardless of what happens in regulatory, um, folks have made a commitment to this. So it's probably best to get on board. It's probably best to say, okay, we understand this is now the table stakes, the cost of doing business, or this is what our customers are requiring, and how do we do it in the best manner possible.
Gotcha. And how can people get a hold of you if they
Yeah.
want to learn more?
Yeah, we'd love to connect with anyone. It's my email is morgan.anderson@spark360.com. And that Spark is a Q, so SPARQ 360.com. Or you can
Perfect.
connect with me on LinkedIn. I'd love to connect with you, and help in any way that we can.
Fantastic. I'm just going to let people know one other thing. There's an article that you authored on LSPs and sustainability, and I'll drop a link for that as well if people want to kind of get a more holistic view of this. And thank you so much for your time, Morgan, and thanks everybody for watching.
Yeah, thanks, Evan. Great.